Hello. As we're looking at European exploration, there's just a couple things you need to kind of think about, particularly when you're looking at topics 1.3 about European exploration and 1.4 about the Spanish and the Columbian exchange. You might ask yourself, why are we focusing a lot on the Spanish? So we might have mentioned this in class, but um, we often think of that time period with really two things, and one of those is the voyages of Columbus. So we think about Columbus, and Columbus, sailed the ocean blue in, 1492. We know that, okay? And so there we think of Columbus. The other thing we need to remember is where Columbus is from. So he's Italian, but he's working for Spain. And that's important to remember because the other thing we then think about uh, is England and the Pilgrims. So we kind of go from Columbus, and we in fact in October we have Columbus Day. We get our first kind of day off for the year, and then we shift right to Thanksgiving. Okay, but one thing people sometimes forget is that the Pilgrims are 1620, and so there's a huge gap there between that, between having a Columbus Day break and having Thanksgiving and watching football and eating turkey and all that. And we have to remember something else, that the Pilgrims, when you think of them, came from a country called England. And you have to really understand that in the 14 and 1500s, Spain and England were not really on the same footing. Spain was what we would say is more cosmopolitan, meaning they had a lot of culture. And cosmopolitan, we often think of cities, the center of culture. So they're more cultured. They're sort of having their renaissance after the Italians did. They're a bit more advanced. They have really one of the best military in the world, and that's kind of where they're at. Meanwhile, England, on the other hand, is what we would say is far more provincial, meaning think country out in the provinces, think less advanced, think a bit behind. And in fact, England, along with France to a certain degree, was about 100 years behind Spain, more or less. And so you want to kind of keep that in mind, that it's much more complex when we really think about the history of America. And so Spain is going to kind of dominate this period, during the 1500s in America and in the Americas and in other places. And so when we look at this map of the age of exploration, and we have some of the explorers there, you notice the Spanish possessions are in yellow on this map. And Portugal has kind of gone to the eastern, half of the world. And in fact, when they battled over it, they went, it's like two kids in the backseat battling over things. They went to an authority they listened to. They went to the Catholic Church and negotiated the Treaty of Tordesillas. And in fact, you can see there they kind of put a line, down the middle of the world. And Portugal, with the exception of Brazil, doesn't get much of the Americas. And Spain, you can see, is very dominant. And Spain's very powerful. So when England and France start to explore, they are going to try to avoid Spain. They don't want kind of a war with Spain. And so a lot of French exploration we know happens in what is Canada today, and a lot of English exploration happens here. Basically, they get the leftovers. And that the English really aren't even going to become successful in North America until 1607 with Jamestown. There was an attempt in Roanoke in the late 1500s, didn't work very well, but things are shifting. So just understand that complexity as you look at these topics, and as you understand the Columbian exchange and what's going on there, that you understand that little power dynamic.